the prediction of the last speaker was the sales cycle for embedded AI is going to be really long. It's going to be really hard. These devices are not going to come on as fast as everyone thinks. What's your view on that?
Well, if you think about Waymos and Tesla FSD and Zoox, it's taken about 10 years. If you think about where the ecosystem was in 2015, and it was really pre-transformer. It was really pre what we call the next generation of AI today. And 10 years is a pretty short period of time for the type of adoption that society has for things like driving, which is all about what you need from a day-to-day perspective. It needs to be safe. It needs to be reliable. I think the next 5 years is going to move even faster. I think there is an adoption in society that robots are going to be amongst us. Cars is where it starts. I think robots are going to become much more pervasive than people think.
All right. So one of your responsibilities is automotive for Qualcomm. Give us a preview. What kind of intelligence are we actually going to see in our cars in the next, let's say, 5 years?
So I think for us, as a chip company, what is really important is, are you able to change the architecture of the platform rapidly? That is starting to happen. If you think about the chips that are going into cars today, they are 10x, 50x sometimes even compared to what you might have seen 5 years ago. We are building everything that gets deployed with an AI surface area, whether it is for the cockpit, whether it is for driving. And the rate at which AI is evolving, these are all becoming applications that you get deployed. So it really just comes down to how deeply understood is the opportunity at the automaker, and then it comes down to which automaker is far enough along to be able to take advantage of it. But the underlying technology, the infrastructure, that's all available. If you look at the rate at which China is evolving, especially with the EV transition, with tech companies who also build EV products, that's probably where it's moving the fastest. But we are starting to see the same thing happen in other parts of the world.
Yeah, and is it going to be mostly, do you think, in sort of driver assistance technology or other sorts of, what are we going to see in the cars?
Probably both. We launched our first driver assistance stack with BMW in September. So we started to build our own stack. We launched that, and that's across 60 countries. I was listening to Joe's comments on guardrails and safety. I think it's very similar. It really comes down to you have to be able to rely on the product that you're purchasing from a safety perspective, because it is a core essential part of what it is that you're buying the product for. Now, over time, as you get more data, the lines between what is pure AI versus what is guardrails blur in the context of a car. But to be able to deploy at the diversity that a product like a car is sold, multiple countries. We are now in 60 countries. It took us 3.5 years to get there. We will be in 100 countries by the end of next year. So to be able to guarantee something that is regulated, something that needs to work without fail, that requires a set of guardrails that are rules-based, and then AI then layers on top.
And how much of this can actually be done on platform, on the car, in device? I mean, I know Qualcomm's had this position that a lot of intelligence is going to be pushed to the edge, and certainly in driver assistance scenarios, it has to be on the edge because of the latency. But as you know, these larger models, which are developed, deliver these frontier capabilities on reasoning, those things right now have to be delivered in the data center. How do you see this evolving?
It depends upon the use case. If you think about the businesses that I'm in, automotive has a real-time nature to it in the context of ADAS. That's all running local. There is nothing running in the cloud. And then there is the cockpit aspect of automotive, which is a combination. It's a hybrid. Part of it runs in the car, part of it runs in the cloud. So it's hybrid depending upon what you're trying to do. I kind of equate it to search. If you want to search for something that needs to be accurate, it couldn't potentially run just at the edge. On the other hand, if it's fast, real-time, safety critical, it couldn't run in the cloud. I think that's a very easy way to kind of define what the spectrum is. Robots, very similar. Things that require an aid for information that is sitting in a database in the cloud obviously has to go to the cloud.
Interesting. Qualcomm, you've made a number of acquisitions in the past year. I guess you're telling me backstage of 5 acquisitions. I know Edge Impulse is one of them. Can you talk through why this acquisition spree? What capabilities have you brought in with these acquisitions?
So, for us as a company that has been doing smartphones for really most of our history, and we've been known as a smartphone application processor communications company, what was really important was to be able to start to figure out how do we change the DNA of the company to transform towards other industries. We started on the automotive side very organically, but especially as we start to look at where the new ideas are going to come from. they are not likely going to come from the traditional customers that we serve. So we took upon ourselves this mandate to really bring in a brand new culture. We acquired Arduino 2 months ago. That gives us access to over 30 million users globally. We acquired Edge Impulse in the summer, and that gives us access to an MLOps pipeline for training for the edge. What we are trying to do with these acquisitions is to be able to take our products, make them part of these ecosystems, allow these developers to be able to build on our silicon with open platforms, with open interfaces, and that allows us to be able to get closer to the use cases.
Right, absolutely. I'm going to come to the audience for questions in a minute, so if you have a question, get it ready. I wanted to talk about what other kinds of platforms you think we're going to see. There's a lot of discussion about, is there going to be a kind of a new device to interface with AI? There's been all kinds of talk about necklaces. OpenAI is building something. We don't know exactly what. You have a good insight into this, I'm sure. What do you think is the kind of killer device going to be for AI?
So, I think with robots, I think the new AI is about applying AI to the physical environment. And there isn't, I think that's still very early. That isn't something that has been defined yet. But if you think about the context of personal AI, where the AI that is running on your person has to be able to have a really good idea of what is around you. How do you convert the environment around you, map it to something that you can actually navigate, or the AI can navigate for you? I think that's an area where robotics is being applied at scale. A lot of those technologies will apply to personal AI as well. So, for example, the ability to be able to connect cameras to haptics, the ability for you to be able to touch and feel something, be able to tell the difference between what it is that you're touching and how you react to it. The interaction between the sensors and the senses. So your sensors typically are cameras, your senses is haptic based. How does that evolve, and then how does that apply to personal devices that you might be using?
Well, that's a good day. So you laid out a lot of the questions that are going to have to be solved, but not necessarily the answers there. All right, let's go to the audience for at least one question. We've got one right up here in front. We can go to this gentleman. Please state your name and where you're from.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Pankaj Kedia, ex-Qualcomm. I worked with Nakul for 10 years. Now I went to the dark side, investing in AI. But Nakul, data centers. Nvidia is killing it. Intel, AMD, many of the hyperscalers, many of the startups. It's a very crowded space. Would love to get your take on Qualcomm and data center. Where does Qualcomm fit in?
All right, that's a good question.
Why would Qualcomm win?
Yeah, where does Qualcomm fit in the data center play? You guys just announced a big entry into the data center AI space. How does this fit in? How are you going to outcompete these other players?
So, I think first and foremost, computing in the cloud is changing. It's no longer going to be general purpose computer. It's going to be a different type of computing. I think the second piece is, I think all of us can agree, computing in the cloud today is very expensive for a variety of reasons, for energy, for cost of compute, for reasons that there are not many choices. We've been successful through the history of the company by being able to build products that are focusing on efficiency. So whether it's the cost of token, whether it's the cost per watt, that's something that we do really well. I think what is starting to happen now with AI workloads is that it's pretty clear as to what workload makes sense for what specific application. So we are now in the second stage of AI, and we don't believe that GPUs are the only way that these problems will be solved. I think we made a few announcements. There's more to come in 26, but there is a massive amount of interest in being able to take much more efficient compute, things that we've been doing over the history of the company, and applying it. And I'll tell you from experience, I've been running the automotive business 15 years now. We are number one in automotive compute. We didn't sell a single automotive chip in 2016. So at the end of the day, when you have such massive disruption going on, and it has to be democratic, everybody has to be able to get access to it, I think free market economics typically win out. So that's the bet that we are making, and I think the bet we are making is a technology-based bet. It's not based upon anything else. I think the other piece is this is a game of scale. At the end of the day, you have to be able to have massive scale to be able to operate in this space. We are not focusing on headlines. We are focusing on scale. That's where we're going to be spending our time.
Interesting. And how do you see the balance of emphasis at the company between the on-edge stuff, which is traditionally where you've been strong, and this new move into the data center?
So the way that we think about how we invest is to first focus on technology. Do we have core technology IP within the portfolio that has application more broadly? And I'll use the example of automotive, which is a really good one. When we acquired the Nvidia asset for CPU, we immediately started to think about, should we make this a safety core? Because if you're going to have a high-performance core, why would we not apply it to a market that is going to be needing that same high-performance core? It's the same concept. If we have cores that apply to CPUs that are relevant in the data center or our NPU technology that's relevant, we are going to go figure out a way to go scale it. Then I think it comes down to what is the specific product that you have to build at that point in time that is solving a specific problem whose time has come to go solve the problem. And once you take that approach, the market is going to always move towards what is the cost of ownership to go solve a problem of that sort. In my mind, in the previous session, the question about is AI a bubble came up. It is not a bubble, but it is certainly frothy. It certainly needs to move towards some reconciliation between what will scale in terms of what the affordability looks like. Everything is going to be AI-based, but you are going to have different solutions, and we do believe there is a massive market over the next decade for it.
Interesting. I know you spend a lot of time with the automotive makers. They would very much, I think, love to sort of own the AI assistants of the future, but their sort of history with this is a bit fraught. They thought when we had the first wave of digital assistants, they tried to build their own into cars, but most people just take their phone, and then you're using your Android assistant or you're using Siri or whatever it is in your car through Apple CarPlay. How do you think this is going to shape out in this new wave? Do the car makers have any chance of actually kind of recapturing that real estate?
When I started to spend time on this maybe about a decade ago, people asked me, why would you not just give this up to Google? Why would Android not just take over the car? But there are a couple of reasons. I think the car is a platform that requires many different digital ecosystems to be hosted. It's very difficult for a digital ecosystem to just come in and say, let me own this surface area, because this is not a phone. It is a product that has safety, it has reliability, it has a very different life cycle. It requires much more curation in terms of what specific market you're applying it to. Where we are about 10 years later is really this, in the West, I think China is a bit different, but in the West, this very good balance between where does the auto industry want to innovate, versus where does it leave it to the ecosystem to be able to bring core technology in. We kind of help create that balance. We help create solutions since we have a very strong partnership with the digital ecosystem and obviously the automakers.
Great. We're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time, but thank you very much, Nakul, for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. Thank you.